The delegate from Fairfax, Delegate Simon.
Speaking to the bill.
The delegate has the floor.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't plan to speak on this bill today, but I feel like I need to say a little bit because I think we need to understand what we're voting on. So we have an old saying in my synagogue and growing up, I think it's fairly universal, which is that if you get two Jews in a room, you'll get three different opinions, right? I think you guys may have witnessed some of that happening here in this floor debate. And so that means that sometimes one person can be of more than one mind on some of these things. And so we didn't really get an explanation yesterday of what the floor amendment was and how it was different than the underlying bill. And so, Mr. Speaker, I just want to take a second. I know we've got a long day, but I think it's important that we all understand what we're voting for. And we've heard some references to a Democratic legislator working to amend the bill, and that was me. And so I just want to explain sort of why I did and what I did in crafting that floor amendment so we understand what it was. So the first thing, the difference between the original bill and the floor substitute that we adopted yesterday that we're voting on today is it took the bill out of the Code of Virginia, all right? The bill had been described to many of us as a Section 1 bill, I think out of actual confusion about what it was. It was a Title I bill. It was putting a definition in the code, and it's very important to even proponents of the IRA, regardless of how you feel about it, and the author of IRA himself has said it should not be used as something that should be codified. It should not become part of the legislative code. It shouldn't be used for enforcement. In fact, the title of the definition includes the words non-legally binding in every case. And so we've gone ahead and amended it to add the words non-legally binding. We moved it out of the code into the Acts of Assembly. And there's a list of uses which it was allowed to be used for. And the floor amendment made that list an exclusive list because we've heard a lot of concerns from people that it's going to be used for purposes that the original definition was not intended to use. And so, Mr. Speaker, I say that because my effort was, I can count, as the Speaker said. I can count to 52. We can count to 21. And so I understand that this bill, and we saw by the round of applause that we got, this bill is going to leave this chamber. And so my goal in amending it was to make sure that the bill that leaves this chamber is the best possible version of this bill. And I know that a lot of people are going to vote for it. And I wanted to make sure that you didn't vote for something that was codifying something that shouldn't be codified. I wanted to make sure you weren't voting for something that could be read as being legally binding when it's never intended to be legally binding. I wanted to make sure that you were voting for a list of things that was an exclusive list so this legislation couldn't be misused. And so, Mr. Speaker, this isn't something that I asked for, something that I wanted to do, and this isn't necessarily something that I wanted to vote for, but I appreciate the patron allowing me to make those changes to essentially, I hate to use this word, but I won't want to say water it down, but to minimize the potential negative impact, the minimal amount of unintended consequences the bill could have. So I don't know if that gives anybody any more clarity about how you're going to vote. I'm not going to be the tiebreaker in this. But I do think it's important that folks understand that the improvements that were accepted were made so that this definition could be as undamaging as possible. There are going to be people that will vote against this bill that aren't anti-Semitic. I don't think a vote no on this bill makes you an anti-Semite. You won't have a hard time with me if you vote no on this bill. I think there are people that will vote for this bill that are not anti-Palestinian and are not wanting us to get involved in international relations. I can see good arguments for voting for it or against it, but I think it's important that we understand the purpose, and my purpose in particular, in amending the bill, and we have that context before we take this final vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shall the bill pass?